free to be whoever you want to be. Feel free to dance, feel free to sing, just feel free. Feels like the world.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Two Tone Talk podcast. Episode 11 is live now on YouTube, but we're also on Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, other places where you get your podcast. If you're listening, thank you for joining. If you're watching, thank you for joining. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Two Tone Talk podcast. It is December 26th, 2022. And first of all, let me be the last to wish you and yours a Merry Christmas. I hope you had a good one. Hope you had a happy holiday. Hope that you got everything you ever dreamed of this Christmas. Let me also say, I don't think any of us Titans fans got what we dreamed of on Christmas Eve, as our Tennessee Titans have now lost 5 straight games. The latest, a new low, a new rock bottom for the Tennessee Titans, as they have now lost to the Houston Texans 19-14 at home in the cold on Christmas Eve. They are now below 500. A team that at one point was 7-3 and looked like they had all but wrapped up their division is now 7-8. And if the playoffs started today, they would not be in them. And now, in Week 18, they are going to have to fight for their lives against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville in a winner-take-all AFC South showdown. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. And I just don't know what to tell you. As I said, it is a new low. We are finding new lows for this team every single week. And where do I begin? Well, we have to talk about the quarterback. Malik Willis started this game. And, definitely looked more comfortable than he did earlier on in the season. Yes. Definitely, did more in this game than he's done at any other point in times that he's played. His final numbers, 14 of 23, 99 yards, 2 interceptions. And on the ground, he had 7 carries for 43 yards and a touchdown. We can debate all day. This kid is just not ready. He is not ready. He is not ready to be in there. And I'll tell you something else. God bless him. This is not an indictment on him as a person. He's a good kid, whatever. But Malik Willis ain't ready now, and I don't think he's going to be ready next season either. He's doing all he can, but he's a kid. He's a project from the 3rd round that they're trying to mold into something, and he's not ready yet, and I don't think he's going to be ready anytime particularly soon, if ever. Some of you will disagree. Some of you, and listen, some of you have a good argument. You say, hey, what? They're not exactly putting a kid in a position to succeed when they put him behind this offensive line and give him these kinds of weapons and this offensive coordinator. And you know what? Yeah, that's true too. But I don't know how you can confidently watch what happened the other day and just say, yeah, we should go with him. I don't know how you do that. Now, initially, And I said this on Twitter. I said, you better get ready for another year of Tannehill, because they're going to bring Tannehill back next season because they're not going to be confident in Willis, and they don't have, they've got too many other holes to fill on this team to draft a quarterback. So I initially said, they're going to bring Tannehill back. But got to keep in mind they're going to have a new GM. And Tannehill, it would cost a good bit of money to keep him for another year. So I don't know what you're going to be looking at quarterback-wise. But I can tell you, I don't particularly feel too good about Malik Willis going into next year. He's just not ready. He's not ready. He's more comfortable now than he was, but he's still got a ways to go. The interception that he threw, not on the last play of the game on the Hail Mary, but the drive before that pretty much ended the game, that was horrible. That was a horrible, horrible interception. He had a great touchdown run. His touchdown run was a good one. But the first interception he threw was horrendous. And I understand the people who say, hey, we shouldn't just give up on a rookie. We shouldn't, Josh Allen, I'm not comparing him to Josh Allen. I'm just saying, as an example, Josh Allen was terrible when his first year in Buffalo. Peyton Manning was terrible his first year in Indianapolis. I understand that guys come in as rookies and they may not look good, and you give them time and eventually they do. I understand that. I'm not saying that you should, throw in the towel on Malik Willis. If you want to keep hope that in a couple of years he can be something, great. But I'm just saying right now and in the immediate future, he's not ready and he's not the guy yet, if ever. I've got people on YouTube, as I'm doing this on a live stream. Somebody said, what happens? Brody said, what happens if the Titans lose to Dallas? Here's the thing. The game against Dallas is meaningless. It doesn't matter what happens against Dallas. The Jacksonville game, they play Houston on Sunday. That game's meaningless. The Titans are going to be resting starters Thursday night against Dallas because it doesn't matter if they win or lose. The fact of the matter is, it is confirmed, no matter what happens this week, the final week of the season, week 18, it will probably be flexed to Sunday Night Football, God help us. It's going to be Jags versus Titans in a play-in game. The winner of the game is going to win the AFC South, and the loser is going to go home. So it's an interesting situation for both teams. The Titans play the Cowboys Thursday night in Nashville, and like I said, it is a meaningless game. The Jaguars play the Texans on Sunday, and it is a meaningless game. It means nothing. I think you may see both teams resting some starters. If anybody's got any lingering injuries at all, they ain't playing this week for either one of those two teams. Will Dodson said, at what point does the media start pointing fingers at Vrabel? They're numb to the fact that he's an expatriate and a former coach of the year. I'll say this, and I've been vocal about this. I like Mike Vrabel. I think he is a good coach. I like him. My biggest problem with Vrabel is what appears to me to be sheer stubbornness. I understand the idea that, hey, we don't want to fire anybody in the middle of the season when we're in the middle of playing games. But when you're in this position, I mean, what's the point in keeping Todd Downing on the payroll? Why? You can say, well, we're going to wait till the season's over, and then no. Why even bother? Why even bother? What is this team going to be any worse off if you get rid of Todd Downing? Absolutely not. So I do agree that, we've held John Robinson responsible for some of this. He's been fired. We always hold Todd Downing responsible, but as much as we tend to like him and think he does a good job, Mike Vrabel has to be held at least somewhat responsible too. He is the head coach. He has to be held responsible for some of this. He has to share in the blame. So, back to the game Sunday. Looking back on it, 2 days later, the offensive line was terrible, just like we knew it would. And it wasn't just the backups. You know, they had guys we've never heard of in their own offensive line. But I'm looking at the guys that have been starters all along. Nicholas Petit-Frere, he was hurt and didn't play in the second half. But in the first half when he did play, he was horrible. He was horrible. Dennis Daly, once again, just watching guys run right by him. I can't even talk about it anymore. I've talked about it till I'm two-tone blue in the face. Dennis Daly is horrible. And at this point, I'm not sure they have any other option because Dylan Radins, surprise, is on injured reserve. He ain't coming back. So I'm afraid we're stuck with him. Nate Davis ain't coming back. Ben Jones ain't coming back. So you've got guys you've never heard of. Aaron Brewer, he still has times where he gets manhandled. So the offensive line was horrible. And we got to talk also about Derrick Henry's fumbling issue. Listen, I love Derrick Henry. I've said it before and I'll say it again. He may very well be the greatest Titan of all time. But right now, this guy's got a huge fumbling problem. He fumbles every week. And this week was his biggest fumble to date. Because the Titans were up 14-10, and they were driving down the field to go up 2 possessions on the Houston Texans in a situation where I think if the Titans had gone up 21-10 right there, that it would have been over, because I don't think the Texans were even good enough to score 2 touchdowns to take the lead. And they're driving down the field, and Derrick Henry fumbles. What is going on with this guy? A lot of people are talking about the fact that he wears sleeves now, and is that a part? I don't know, but the guy keeps fumbling. And he keeps shrugging his shoulders, and he keeps doing this, and he keeps shaking his head, and it's like, stop fumbling! Stop fumbling! A lot of people have this attitude. Listen, I love Derrick Henry. I've got 2 Derrick Henry jerseys in my closet right now. But a lot of people have this attitude of like, oh, it's, you know, Derrick Henry and the Misfit Toys. And listen, sometimes, man, that is a name I hadn't heard in a while. Somebody on the YouTube live chat said Amon Green syndrome. You want to talk about a name I haven't heard in a long time. Amon Green. Wow, that's a throwback. But yes. But Derrick Henry, he is sharing in the woes of this team too. You can't act like, well, Henry's the only one not messing up. No, Henry's messing up too. He's fumbling every week. So then you have Malik. He threw a horrible interception that pretty much ended the game. He had a nice touchdown run in there. You have Treylon Burks, who returned to the lineup after being out for 2 weeks. He was not a focal point of the offense whatsoever. Then even other than that one reverse play, there was no effort to get him the ball whatsoever. And now we segue into another segment about Todd Downing and how incompetent he is. And I would rant about it for 20 minutes, but you already know. You know what I'm going to say because you've probably said it in your own home as you watch. The guy's horrible. If I have to watch another 3rd and short with Derrick Henry not even on the field, I'm going to lose my mind. What's one thing we know Malik Willis can do? Run. He can affect the run game. His legs are very important. So we run the read option maybe a couple times in the game. That's something that Tannehill hasn't been able to run because he's on a bum ankle. Now we have a guy in there that we know can run, and we don't adapt that's what baffles me. You've got a guy who brings something very different to the lineup than Ryan Tannehill with his legs, and there's no effort to get his legs involved in anything. The only time he made anything happen with his legs, other than the touchdown run, was when the offensive line completely broke down in 2 seconds and he had to run for his life. No effort to get Malik Willis's legs involved in the game plan. No effort to get Treylon Burks involved in the game plan. The guy's bad at his job. And that's something, again, that Mike Vrabel must be held responsible for, because he stands over there and watches this happen every week, and he talks about execution. We got to have guys that execute. Yeah, sure, you got to have guys that execute, but you also got to have a game plan that gives the guys a chance. You are putting your roster, which, again, let me say this. You talk about injuries, you talk about all this stuff. The Titans don't have enough talent on the roster, especially on the offensive side. You could make the argument that on the defensive side of the ball, when they're all healthy, there's enough talent there. Okay, that's fine. But on the offensive side of the ball especially, there is no way you can tell me that this team has enough talent. At the offensive line, at the wide receiver position, they don't have enough talent. So you factor that, you couple that with the fact that they have an offensive coordinator who doesn't have any talent. You have one of the worst offenses I've ever seen. That's what you get. What we have seen all season with this team, that's what you get when you get a roster of not very talented guys, not enough talent on the offense, mixed with an offensive coordinator that doesn't have any talent. You throw a couple injuries in there, and you get what you get with the Titans, a horrible offense. Somebody, Will Dodson, said, did you see/hear Rex Ryan destroy Todd Downing on ESPN Countdown? Yes, I did. And Rex Ryan was correct. He was right. If you hadn't watched that clip, go on Twitter, go on YouTube, and watch it. I said on Saturday after the game, I said the Titans may be the worst team in the league right now. If you ranked them like college football from 1 to 32, the Titans may be 32. That was before I saw what the Broncos did yesterday. They may be better than the Broncos. But that's like saying, you know, my last turd was better than the turd before it. You know, like, it's a turd either way, you know? How about that great analogy? I don't know, man. I don't know. It's just to the point now. I mean, I watched the post-game press conference, and Mike Vrabel sounds totally like he just has surrendered. He knows the team's horrible, and, you know, and now you just, I don't know. I don't know what the goal is. You want to beat the Jags? I mean, here's the thing. We could sit here all day and say, you know what? I hope the Titans don't make the playoffs. I hope the Jags just beat them in Week 18, and then it can just be over. And on one hand, yes, I am very ready for this season for the Titans to be over. I'm very ready. I'm so done with watching this every single week. It's miserable. But on the other hand, like, I'm not naive. I know that when that game starts in a couple weeks, I'm going to be rooting for the Titans to win. I don't have it in me to sit there and be like, oh, I hope we lose. I can't do that. So, like, and even if for nothing else, just to ruin the Jags season, that would be great. But if they get in the playoffs, what are they going to do? Especially with Malik. I mean, I'm sorry. The kid ain't ready. You ain't making no noise in the playoffs with this guy. And it's not just him. To be fair, this offensive line, horrible. And last year, there were a lot of injuries last season. But you knew that those guys were coming back. You know, yeah, A.J. Brown's out, but he's coming back. Yeah, this offensive lineman is out, but he's coming back. They're going to be back for the playoffs. This time, no. Ben Jones ain't going to be back. Taylor Lewan ain't going to be back. Nate Davis ain't going to be back. Harold Landry ain't going to be back. Kyle Phillips ain't going to be back. The only guy that will probably be back is David Long. He will be eligible to come back for that Jacksonville game in Week 18. But outside of him, that's it. Tannehill is an unbelievably long shot. But, you know, I don't expect Tannehill back. So, and even if he does come back, he's going to be back on one leg. So, and with this offensive line, you really want a guy in there that can't move, that can't escape the pocket, that can't run for his life. That's the only thing Willis can bring to the table right now that Tannehill can't, is his ability to run for his life. Which behind this offensive line, you have to be able to run for your life, and Tannehill won't be able to. It's just a bad team, man. It's a bad team, and I hate it because it's a unique thing. I mean, they got our hopes up. At one point, they were 7-3, and they got our stupid hopes up. And then, over the last 5 weeks, they have slapped us in the face. There were fans who went out to Nissan Stadium on Christmas Eve, and they sat out there and froze their butts off trying to cheer on this team. After what the crap that they've watched for the last month, there were fans that still went out there and sat in the Arctic conditions and braved that for this terrible team. And what did they do? They just slapped them in the face again. And I saw the social media post by some of the players. Big Jeff, he's posted on Twitter and Instagram after the game, man, we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out. Titans fans, stick with us. Kevin Byard's posted, man, we're going to figure it out. Stick with us. Guys, I love those guys, Byard and Simmons and some of the other guys that posted. Man, they're leaders, and I get it. Why should I believe that they're going to figure this out? It's been 5 weeks of absolute Titans hell. And you expect me to believe that somehow, after the crap that you have put us through for the last 5 weeks, you're magically just going to flip a switch and come out and be good? Why should I believe that? I'm sorry. And it's not an indictment on Simmons and Byard. They're saying what they got to say. They're leaders. They know the stakes are high in that game against Jacksonville next week. I get it. But I just have a problem believing it. B Ravens 1 in the YouTube chat says, breaking news, according to Tom Pelissaro, Nathaniel Hackett fired. Well, that's not surprising. What a disaster they are. Someone said, will Simmons get a big contract with the Titans? I would imagine so. It would be a disaster 2 straight off seasons. You don't re-sign A.J. Brown and then you don't re-sign Jeffrey Simmons. That would be, mutiny on your hands if that happens. So I would anticipate that they're going to sign Jeffrey Simmons to a big deal. The good thing about the offseason is, they've got some guys on defense they've got to re-sign. But defensively, the defense is still not really the problem. There's a couple areas in the secondary you'd like to improve. But the offensive side of the ball is where all the changes have got to occur. And we'll wait until the offseason officially hits to talk about it. But new offensive coordinator, a total renovation of the offensive line, new receivers, figure out what you're doing at quarterback, somehow convince Derrick Henry to stay. I don't know. Why would Simmons want to re-sign? I don't know. If they offer him enough money, money talks. But at this point in time, this season's just a disaster. It's a disaster. And I'm ready for it to end. I'm very ready for it to end. Thank you. My dear wife just brought me some coffee. So, all is not lost on this. Hey, there she is, everybody. There she is. There's my wife.
I'm the best.
We're talking, and now my dog's in here.
Roman.
Get out of here, bud. You got to get him a treat. Anyway, the dog, the wife, everybody's here trying to cheer me up from this disaster of Tennessee Titans madness. Now the Cowboys game Thursday is meaningless. It's going to be like a preseason game. Jeffrey Simmons has been needing a week off for 2 months. So, he ain't going to play. Derrick Henry don't need to play. Rest him up because he's going to have to run for 300 yards against Jacksonville behind one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen. What would you do with the quarterback? Should Willis play the entire game against Dallas just to get the reps in, or would you play him a half and then let Josh Dobbs, who they just signed last week, let him take a half of football and what? I don't know. And also, I mean, you could make the argument, I say it's a meaningless game, who cares? But some people would say, hey, maybe that would shift the momentum a little bit if the Titans could somehow beat the Cowboys Thursday. Maybe that gives you a little momentum going into that Jacksonville game. Me personally, I mean, maybe. You could make that argument, but I don't know. To me, it's a meaningless game. And rest everybody that remotely needs it at all. And, but then even if you beat Jacksonville in Week 18, what are you going to do in the playoffs? I don't know. I agree with T-Town Brown, who said Malik does need the experience of playing in the whole game Thursday, but wouldn't mind seeing what Dobbs can do. I wouldn't either, because what can it hurt? Again, Tannehill's trying to come back, but it's such a long shot. I can't even imagine. Let's talk about some of the other games from the weekend. Most of the games were on Christmas Eve, but Bills look really good. They beat the Bears 35-13. Bills are, probably in most people's minds a Super Bowl favorite. They look really good. They had like a 2-week slump in the middle of the season, and other than that, they've just been great all across the board. Saints beat the Browns 17-10. Saints are randomly putting together some wins here, and when you're in a division as bad as theirs, they have an outside shot of making it. The Browns, they've so much for Deshaun Watson coming in and revitalizing this offense, because so far he just looks like a guy that hadn't played in 2.5 years. So Saints are hanging around, making things interesting in the NFC South. Browns, I think, are officially eliminated from playoff contention. Surprise. Chiefs beat the Seahawks 24-10. Seahawks, they've been nosediving for about a month and a half now, and now they're 7-8. And looking at that NFC playoff race, they are still alive, but they're going to need some help, and they're going to have to win these last 2 weeks and hope they get some help. But yeah, they unfortunate, because Seattle was a lot of fun there for a little bit with Geno Smith. I was enjoying what they were doing, and I thought Pete Carroll might be the coach of the year, but like I said, for the last month and a half, they've just kind of been nosediving. And the Chiefs, if anybody is going to give the Bills trouble, there is the Bengals, but the Chiefs, I'm always going to consider the Chiefs the team to beat, just because of what they've put together over the last 5 years. When you've got that kind of reputation, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, you're the team to beat. Also, speaking of the Chiefs, I feel like the Titans' best performance of the season, maybe outside of that Green Bay game, was actually in the loss to Kansas City. I actually felt encouraged by how they hung in there that game, only to now watch them squander everything. Vikings over the Giants, man. These Vikings just keep finding a way to win. They beat the Giants 27-24. Tough loss for the Giants, but I still feel like the Giants are they're in good position, because I think every team in that NFC wildcard race lost this week. So the Giants, really no damage done by them losing this game. As for the Vikings, I still just feel like nobody puts the Vikings on the same tier in the NFC as the Eagles, the Niners, the Cowboys. I still feel like people have the Vikings just a notch below them. And I think it's because of Kirk Cousins, I guess. I just think that the Vikings probably haven't passed the eye test as much as those other three teams have. And I think most people would feel like if the Vikings played one of those three teams right now, they would lose. Hard to rely on Kirk Cousins in the playoffs, but you got to give the Vikings some respect. They keep putting together wins. They keep making it happen. So kudos to the Vikings for that. Again, another close win over the Giants, 27-24, in a game that I thought they may lose. Bengals over the Patriots, 22-17. to 18. The Bengals look great. The Bengals, the big three in the AFC is really Bills, Chiefs, Bengals. I mean, that's the big three to me in that conference. The Bengals just they got that swagger that they had last year, confidence. Burrow, I mean, he's something. He's unreal. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, all those weapons that they have. If they stay healthy, they're going to be a tough out in January. Must be nice. The Patriots, this was a missed opportunity for them, but they still have everything in front of them because, well, they got to play the Dolphins this week, and that's going to be a huge game in the AFC. And we'll talk about the Dolphins here in a second. But the Patriots, I said it before, they just won't go away. Every time you think the Patriots are out of it, they keep, they're on a 2-game losing streak. They had that awful loss to the Raiders on the last play of the game. Now they lose this, but yet they've still kind of got everything in front of them because they do play the Dolphins, who are ahead of them now in that wild card race. So keep an eye on the Patriots. They're not totally dead yet, and they do have Bill Belichick. But as for the Bengals, they look great. They beat the Patriots on Christmas Eve. Very disappointed in the Detroit Lions. This was their chance. I thought the Lions beat the Panthers this week. The Commanders ended up losing like I thought they would. This could be the Lions' chance to climb in there, but they lost. They fall to 7-8. Random, because the Panthers haven't looked good, but then Sam Darnold and the Panthers just randomly exploded this week. They beat the Lions 37-23. This game was actually more lopsided than that score even indicates. But the Panthers, just one of those random times that they just come out and look really good. And the Panthers get the win. And so the Panthers, in spite of the fact that the Bucs won, the Panthers are still alive in the NFC South. It's not totally, I think they're the biggest threat right now to the Bucs in that division. So keep an eye on Carolina. Detroit's still fine. They're 7-8. So in the NFC, you've got the Commanders, I think, are the 7 seed still now. But you're in the same position you were last week. You've got the Commanders, you've got Detroit, you've got Seattle. They're all kind of vying for that spot. And they better look out because Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers are lurking in the distance, and things seem to be coming together for them. And as I said, I'll talk about the Packers in a second. Ravens over the Falcons, 17-9. I would say the Falcons, who are now officially eliminated, the Falcons are probably also among the worst teams in the league. They're in an unfortunate position because you would have hoped that Desmond Ridder would come in and play well so you could have hope in him going into next season. He hasn't. You lost to the Ravens, who had a backup quarterback, and they looked really bad. So it's tough for Atlanta. I actually will throw out my scenario that I said last week. What about the possibility of next year Atlanta Falcons starting quarterback Ryan Tannehill? Can you imagine? Arthur Smith knows Tannehill. Arthur Smith, his offense in 2020 with Tannehill as quarterback was the offense that led to Arthur Smith becoming a head coach. I consider the fact that Tannehill could be starting quarterback for the Falcons next year, because if you're not confident in Ridder, do you want to spend a draft pick on a quarterback? They've got other holes to fill. I don't know. Maybe the Falcons will just draft a quarterback in the first round, but I don't know, man. I would keep my eye on Ryan Tannehill and the Falcons. Texans beat the Titans, obviously. Please punch me in the face as hard as you can. Commanders lost to the 49ers 37-20. The 49ers look really good. They're rolling toward the playoffs. And the Commanders is a tough loss. Couple losses in a row now for them, and the Commanders are going to have to really fight for their lives. They are 7-1, so they are a half game ahead of Detroit and Seattle, and the other teams contending for that spot, and they're going to have to hold on. These Washington Commanders are, but this is a shame because they were really fun there for a little bit. They were rolling. I liked the swagger they had, and now they're kind of, they're on a little skid here. But the 49ers, they played a good 49ers team this week. 49ers look really good at the right time of year. Must be nice. Cowboys beat the Eagles. The Eagles were without Jalen Hurts, but the Cowboys beat the Eagles 40-34. Dallas is coming to Nashville Thursday night. They're going to beat the Titans. But also the Titans are going to be playing probably with a bunch of backups. But it doesn't matter because the Titans starters aren't too great either. The Cowboys won over the Eagles. It was a good win for the Cowboys. I still don't think the Cowboys are going to win this division. I think they need the Eagles to lose out and the Cowboys win out. I don't think the Eagles are going to lose out, though. But the Cowboys, it's a good win for them to kind of get their mojo back because they lost that game to Jacksonville. They didn't look good against Houston the week before. So this was a good opportunity for Dallas, kind of get a little swagger back now that we're rolling toward the playoffs. They still want to be viewed as a contender. So this was a good win for them, even though the Eagles are, of course, going to make the argument that if they'd had Jalen Hurts, then they could have, won this game. But as it is, the Cowboys put up 40 points. Good win for them. Steelers over the Raiders, 13-10. Boring, lame. Neither one of these teams are going to the playoffs. Next, sorry, Raiders and Steelers fans. It's just like, I guess the Steelers are 7-8, so that's the same record as the Titans. I'm sitting here acting like the Steelers ain't no good. They have the same record as the Titans. The Steelers would beat the Titans right now. So would the Raiders. The Steelers are 7-8. So what would they need to happen? I didn't realize the Steelers had come that far. The Steelers were so bad for a while this season, but Steelers are right there. The Steelers, I don't know all the tiebreaker situations. Don't even ask me what the tiebreaker situations are because I don't know. It's so confusing. I know the Dolphins are the 7th seed right now, and then right behind them, you've got the Patriots, the Jets, who looked horrible Thursday against the Jaguars. The Steelers are there. So, you've and I guess this was a big game because if the Raiders had won, they would be 7-8. So this was kind of a whoever loses this game is really out of it. And whoever wins still has a chance, and the Steelers won. So this is why I shouldn't have laughed this game off because it actually was a significant game for both teams. So the Steelers are hanging around there, but again, I don't know the tiebreaker situations either. But just proof that every game matters because I'm sure if you looked at the Steelers' schedule, there's some game in there that they lost by like 2 points. That if they'd won, they'd be sitting a lot prettier right now. Packers beat the Dolphins 26-20. So the Packers are now 7-8. You better look out for them. Again, I don't know all the tiebreaker situations, but they are now a half game back from being in the playoffs. And I'm telling you, I don't care how he's looked up until this point. If I'm in the NFC, I don't want to see Aaron Rodgers. Okay? I don't want to see Aaron Rodgers sneaking into these playoffs at a 7 seed. I've said this before. The one Super Bowl that Aaron Rodgers has won in his career, it was a season where they were the last seed, the 6th seed at that time was the lowest seed, and they ran the table and they won the Super Bowl. I'm telling you, you don't want the Lions, Commanders, and Seahawks, all these teams ahead of them to really fall apart. Because the Packers, I don't want, if I'm in the NFC, I don't want to see Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. But it is interesting because I like most of you, I had left the Packers for dead. After the Titans beat them, I was like, okay, like they're done. They're finished. They're horrible. Look at these guys now, man. The NFL is a crazy place. It is a roller coaster ride. Don't we know it, Titans fans? But the Packers, with 2 weeks to go, they're making a push. Interesting. The Dolphins are going in the opposite direction. The Dolphins, similarly to the Titans, have totally fallen apart. They've now lost 4 straight. They're 8-7, and they're fighting for their lives. And they've got a huge game coming up this weekend against the Patriots, where if the Patriots beat them, this is bad news. These Dolphins, I thought they were contenders in the AFC at one point. I really did. I had put them like, now granted, at that time the Bengals were still kind of putting it together, but I thought the Dolphins could do it. I thought they were contenders. But now Tua has kind of reverted back to Tua. And, they have the speed with Hill and Waddle. But I'm very surprised at how the Dolphins have fallen apart. I think we all knew that in the end the Bills would win that division. But I am very surprised at how the Dolphins have fallen apart. Now, I will say, on this 4-game skid, they have been losing to good teams. They lost to the Bills, the Niners, but still, this is disappointing for them. And to be 8-7 and fighting for your life to try and get in the playoffs, as you now have the Patriots, the Jets, the Steelers, these teams are breathing down your neck, and they're heading in the wrong direction, the Dolphins are. So, going to be interesting. I thought the Dolphins were a shoo-in for the playoffs just a few weeks ago, and now they're going to have to really fight to hold on. Crazy. Broncos, Rams. Okay, if there's any team that I would pick the Titans to beat in the NFL right now, it's the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are horrible. It is a dumpster fire. Apparently, somebody said they just fired their head coach today, and they lost 51-14 to the Rams. The Rams are not even good, and they got killed by the Rams. I don't know what to tell you about the Broncos. I don't know what they're going to do. What all they gave up for Russell Wilson, and this is what they got? Broncos country, let's hide. That's what I'd be saying. I'd be saying, Broncos country, let's hide. Let's go hide away. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, missing this badly, I can't believe what has happened to Russell Wilson. This guy used to be one of the most elite quarterbacks in the league. We probably need to give Pete Carroll more credit or something, because to have Russell Wilson play in the way that he had him in Seattle, and to see, this is horrible. This is like something you couldn't have even scripted in a video game, Russell Wilson falling apart like this. Finally, the Bucs beat the Cardinals in overtime 19-16 in what was a must-win for the Bucs. This would have been a disaster. But they're 7-8 now. I believe the Panthers are a game back at 6-9, and if I'm correct, did the Bucs? Yeah, the Bucs and the Panthers play this week in a huge game. Huge game in Tampa Bay. Panthers traveling to take on the Bucs. Big time game right here in the NFC South. I'm sure the Saints will be sitting back watching. B Ravens 1 in the YouTube chat said Cliff Kingsbury better get fired next. I have a feeling that's coming. What a disappointing season it's been for Arizona. Arizona, who was a playoff team just last year, they had high hopes, especially seeing how bad the Rams ended up being. There was high hopes for the Cardinals in that division. But my goodness, just what a disaster for them, losing to the Bucs in overtime, 19-16 last night. Big win for the Bucs, and now they have a big NFC South showdown with their biggest threat, the Carolina Panthers, coming up. Tonight, December 26th, Chargers, Colts on Monday Night Football in Indianapolis. LOL at the Colts having all these primetime games because everybody thought they were going to be good, and they're not. But the Chargers are sitting pretty all of a sudden. A few weeks ago, things were not looking good for the Chargers at all. And now, they are 8-6, and I'm pretty sure if they win tonight, they clinch a playoff berth. So things have really worked out as they have watched the Dolphins meltdown and the Patriots and the Jets and all these other teams that once upon a time looked like they were really doing well. They've fallen apart. This has allowed the Chargers to really come in and get hot, and now going into the playoffs, they're an interesting team. I'm assuming they're going to get there. I'm assuming they're going to beat the Colts tonight and clinch a playoff berth. They're an interesting team because I think right now they would have to go play the Bengals. I would pick the Bengals to win that game, but Justin Herbert his first time in the playoffs, that's an interesting team to watch because they have a lot of talent on that team. And thinking about the Chargers, I just have to think about how they beat the Titans last week in a heartbreaking loss. The Titans are horrible. That's the conclusion that I come away with as I look at all of these games over the weekend, is that the Titans are horrible and they break our hearts every single week. I can't, it's sad, guys. I don't even, watching Titans games like last season, the last few seasons, it was like one of the highlights of my week. I just couldn't wait to sit down and watch Titans. Even if they were coming off of a loss, it was like, you know what? Still excited to watch them. These last 5 weeks, dude, I just can't even I can't even find the excitement to watch this team. And this Thursday especially, because this Thursday is going to just be a meaningless game. It's like, oh, do I have to watch? But of course, we stick around, man. We're us Titans fans, we're a different breed because we've seen some dark days before, and now we're living through them again. I also want to say what a bittersweet thing it was yesterday, being Christmas. I'm sure some of you Titans fans can relate. Opening Tennessee Titans merchandise that was bought for me for Christmas was a very bittersweet thing. Because, of course, I wear a lot of Titans clothing all year round. But, just a day after they lost their 5th straight game to the Houston Texans, opening yesterday, the first gift I opened was a Titans shirt. I picked it up, looked at it, and I said, they suck. That's the first thing. Merry Christmas, everybody. I literally opened the box, picked up the blue shirt, stared at it, and I said, thank you. They suck. That's literally what I said. And my wife is hitting me on the leg hey. I was like, no, I appreciate the gift. I love the gift. I'm going to wear the shirt all the time. I'm just acknowledging, that they're not any good right now. But you know what? The bottom line is, at the end of the day, no matter how bad things are, this may just be me. There's some fans that are different. No matter how bad it gets, how bad the play calling, the offensive line, the quarterback play, the defense, whatever, when it comes down to it, when they play the Jags in Week 18 and it's all on the line, when that ball is kicked off and that game starts, I'm gonna be rooting. I'm gonna be rooting hard. Because we can sit here all day, and most Titans fans, I feel like you're the same way. We can sit here all day and say, I'd let the Jags win. I've said it on this podcast. Let the Jags win. Let them have it. But you know what? Dang it, when that game comes on, and they're out there, forget the Jags. I'm going to want the Titans to win. You talk about draft position and, how bad they would get beat in the playoffs, whatever. Just get in the tournament. Get in the playoffs. Give us a shot. We don't have a shot, but pretend to give us a shot. Anyway, that's Two-Tone Talk, episode 11. Some of you disagree. Some of you are like, hey, go lose. Go lose to the Jags. Don't waste our time. I can't do it. I can say just go out and lose all I want. When that game starts, I'm on the edge of my seat rooting hard for the Two-Tone Blue. 5 straight losses. How do we do it? How do we do it, Titans fans? Thank you for joining me on the Two-Tone Talk podcast. This podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, and it's on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe on there, and on Twitter, go follow me. I would appreciate that. Thank you. I'll be back Friday with a new episode, and that'll be after the Titans-Cowboys game, so we can talk about that and preview the other games for the weekend. Thank you guys for joining me on the Two-Tone Talk podcast. Staying way too high on the wins and way too low on the losses. God bless you, and a late Merry Christmas. Bye, everybody.
The world is picking on you. Feel free to be